Hello, you're watching Entertainment Week. Coming up on the show, as the release of the comedy film The Interview is cancelled, we assess the damage of the cyber attack on Sony. As Hammer Horror celebrates 80 years, we speak to the studio boss about its enduring appeal. Priscilla Presley tells us how a new exhibition about Elvis has brought the memories flooding back. And the stars of the third Night at the Museum film remember their co-star, Robin Williams. First, this week, Sony Pictures shocked Hollywood by cancelling the release of comedy The Interview in the wake of a cyber attack. The film, which pokes fun at North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un, was pulled by cinemas after threats were made by hackers. It's the latest blow to Sony following weeks of embarrassing disclosures. Among the numerous revelations that have been brought to light are that Angelina Jolie was called a minimally talented, spoiled brat in an email by producer Scott Rudin. It emerged that Oscar winner Jennifer Lawrence was paid considerably less than her male American Hustle co-stars. And the hackers released an early version of the script of the next James Bond film, Spectre. And this is the film that started it all.
The CIA would love it if you two could take him out.
Hmm?
Take him out.
Take him out? Like for drinks?
No. Take him out.
Take out? Like to dinner?
Take him out to a meal?
Take him out.
And I'm joined by our technology correspondent, Tom Cheshire, and entertainment journalist, Steve Hargrave. Tom, first of all, how far-reaching and how serious has this hack been?
It was a really big hack. They got in there and stole more than 100 terabytes of data, and rather than using that for sort of financial gain or benefit, they just dumped it all over the internet, and people have been combing through it ever since then. But then it had this other stage where they're still releasing more and more material. It came with threats this time that anyone who was going to go and see the interview, there would be physical violence, remember September the 11th. And that's quite a different thing for a cyber attack, to go into the physical world and get Homeland Security in America worried and looking at it and it becoming a national security matter, as they were saying just a few days ago.
This has obviously been really embarrassing for Sony, Steve, but how damaging has it been?
Well, I think massively so. I mean, for the people right at the top who have been involved in these email chains that have gone out, it's almost cripplingly embarrassing for some of them who are now sort of under pressure about their jobs, as you'd imagine. I think the thing that's really interesting about it, though, is no one still knows exactly what's at the heart of all of this. That these threats, albeit very serious, are also, have no basis in a sense of saying they are definitively from a so-called terrorist attack or an act of war, as the words has been bandied around. Some people online are saying it's ridiculous to simulate that to being an act of war. It's merely someone saying they don't want to see a film. So there's lots of different levels. But on the level of being embarrassing to Sony, it's horrible for them. But those are the juicy bits that I think the world is much more interested in. The real-life soap opera behind the scenes of all the Hollywood glamour, when you peel it apart and see all the stars embarrassed about George Clooney embarrassed about Monuments Men, or as you say, Jennifer Lawrence not getting as much money, or people really gloating. Angelina Jolie twice, of course. Now we've heard revelations of her being called, words to the effect of spoiled. For them, really embarrassing. For the rest of the world, rubbing their hands and saying, "Bring it on, show us more of
really
what you've
interesting.
got."
Tom, initially people were saying this could be North Korea behind this. What are they now saying?
When this attack was initially made, they actually sent an email threatening Sony executives and not mentioning the interview at all. In the original hack itself, no mention of the interview. It's only after the media started putting together this potential link that North Korea was certainly upset about the interview. They said, well, maybe this is a cyber attack.
Steve, Sony has pulled this film. Does it set a dangerous precedent to give in to these hackers? And it also, it shows how much power they've got, doesn't it?
It does, and I think there is a danger, and some, certainly the high-profile actors, have been the ones who have said that's a really dangerous precedent to set, because we talked before about people's artistic freedom, the notion that you can make comedy about anything, make movies about any subject, and it's kind of okay to a certain degree. And what we are seeing now is obviously a lot of damage limitation from Sony. It's in their interest to big up the fact that they are fighting against some very serious terrorist kind of entity and something. So there's a war of words going on, certainly, between the unnamed sources and Sony, who have got a lot of mopping up to do.
Yeah, and will there be more in the future? Thank you both very much. Time now to catch up on the rest of the week's entertainment news. There is flash photography coming up. Bill Cosby won't be charged over claims he attacked a 15-year-old girl at the Playboy Mansion in 1974. She's one of at least 15 women who've alleged the comedian sexually assaulted them. The cast of Selma, a new film about Martin Luther King, have joined campaigners demonstrating about the death of Eric Garner, who died after police used a chokehold on him in America. Stars wore T-shirts with the slogan "I Can't Breathe" at the premiere of their film in New York. Madonna has described a leak of her new songs as artistic rape and a form of terrorism. Music pirates say the tracks are from the singer's 13th studio album, whereas she claims the unreleased songs are unfinished demos stolen long ago. The cast of stage show Made in Dagenham, including Gemma Arterton, attended a rally outside Parliament to highlight the gender pay gap. And Kasabian have topped the nomination list for this year's NME Awards with an impressive 8 nods. They're up against the Arctic Monkeys and the Libertines for Best Band, among others, and Villain of the Year could go to Russell Brand or Nigel Farage. Trends in the movie business may come and go, but if there's one thing that always remains the same, it's audiences' desire to be terrified. For 80 years, Hammer Film Studios have been giving a host of ghouls and oddities to cinemas, including the greatest monster of them all, Count Dracula. And the horror continues with their latest offering, Woman in Black, Angel of Death.
Don't look at the eyes, Rex.
Tricked you! Your turn to hide. 1, 2, 3.
And the president of Hammer Film, Simon Oakes, joins me now. Simon, lovely to see you. This looks absolutely terrifying.
Good.
The first film with Daniel Radcliffe was a great success.
Yes.
How hard was it to follow that up?
Very hard. I mean, we obviously with the first film we had the book, and there'd been a play in the West End for 25 years, and we had Jane Goldman, who's a great genre writer, and then Daniel agreed to do the first film after Harry Potter. So it was a sort of, you know, a serendipity moment where everything came together at the right time. For this, we had to create a story basically from the ground upwards. And we wanted to create a separate film, not just a sequel. But we didn't have Daniel, obviously, who died at the end of the first one. And we wanted to move it on a time period. So we literally had to find inspiration from other things. And the thing that inspired us was the war and evacuees from London and so forth. So it was difficult, but good fun.
Hammer Horror has got such an amazing history. And how important is it for you to honour that history at the same time as keeping it fresh? It's a tricky task, I would think.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, I guess the thing about Hammer is that Hammer had this great success between the late 50s and early 70s, but it stopped making films, really, from then. And the horror of sobriquet came with television in the early 80s. So really, it just sort of closed down. So what we had to do was to imagine, you know, where would it have gone in the last 30 years? What should it be doing now? And I think, basically, you know, character-driven, story-driven movies like they did in the 50s and 60s keeps the heritage alive, often referenced from or inspired from novels, from writing, from literature. So acknowledging the heritage but moving on, because those films were of their time, really.
Horror is, I mean, such an interesting genre, and it's moved on so much from these films, hasn't it? I mean, if you look at things like Saw, they're so unbelievably shocking. I mean, how difficult, again, is that for you to kind of go down that road?
Not at all, not at all, because we won't go down that road. I mean, I've been on record as saying we won't do what I call torture porn or gonography. We won't make those films. I don't have anything particular against them. I think they're fine, whatever. But I think Hammer, you know, we do what we call elevated genre, story-driven, characters that you care about. I mean, if the body count is 20 people by 10 minutes in, you don't care about what happens to them. You care about what happens to Daniel, you care what happens to Phoebe in this film. I think the same about Chloe Moretz in Let Me In. So I think our approach is our approach. I think it's quite a British approach, frankly, and I think that's what we want to keep.
But you've always been quite revolutionary. I mean, in terms of censorship, historically, you've gone quite close to the bone, haven't you?
It was definitely groundbreaking, you know, in the 50s and 60s, and the marketing was incredible. But, you know, they got X rating for films that wouldn't even get a U rating today, frankly. So the world has moved on.
At the moment, we're talking about the leaks at Sony. Has it made you kind of reassess your security at all? Anything that you do?
Not remotely. I mean, listen, you know, I personally have never written emails like that and sent them. I might have thought them. I feel very sorry for Amy, who's a brilliant executive, and everybody involved, frankly. I think the trouble with this is there are like 5 or 6 issues all going on at the same time. It's not just about them, it's about the cinema owners, it's about censorship, it's about freedom of speech. So many different issues. No, we just carry on. We're fine.
Do you think it was the right decision for them to pull the film?
You want me to actually answer that? Gosh. No, I don't. I think they should have basically gone ahead and then let the cinema owners, who basically the exhibitors, decide if they wanted to take the risk to show it. But I think Sony should have pushed ahead with it. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Nearly 40 years after Elvis Presley died, the king of rock and roll is still a source of fascination for his millions of fans. Now they can get an insight into the man behind the music as an exhibition including hundreds of his belongings opens at the O2 in London. His former wife, Priscilla Presley, gave Sky's Richard Suchet a tour.
We're caught in a trap. I can't walk out.
These are a few of the things that we're putting on exhibit here. First time ever, actually, many of the things first time ever, even for Elvis Presley Enterprises. So we figured that this would be something that the English fans or people from Great Britain, or actually all over, could come and see how he lived, his personal life. As you can see, what he carried in his billfold, what his personal belongings were, things that he liked surrounding him, records that he played, the Cotter that he used, some of the decor that was and still is at Graceland right now. So this really gives a personalization of who Elvis Presley was. This is exactly how it looked. Elvis spent much time playing at that piano, especially early mornings when we'd come home from the theater. We'd watch movies, sometimes till 6 o'clock in the morning.
You have helped to prolong his memory. I mean, of course, he's got many fans, but you've kind of helped keep these things, these artifacts in the public eye. So what was your relationship like in those years after?
Well, I'll explain it this way. I think I had the biggest compliment from my daughter 2 years ago when she was on national television in the States. And one of the questions was, what was it like when your parents had divorced? And she answered that she never knew that we were divorced, that we were the same way together when we were divorced as we were when we weren't together, when we were married. So we were very, very good friends, and we cared very much for each other, and we still loved each other.
I have to ask you, what are your, I don't know, 2 or 3 favourite things in the exhibition?
Oh my gosh. One of them was a letter that he sent to Colonel Parker when he came out of the Army, when it was time for him to come home. In the telegram, he states that he doesn't want to have a fanfare welcoming. He wants to be treated like every soldier that served in their time. And I felt that was very touching, and it really shows a side of Elvis that very few of us would know. You think being a celebrity, you know, give me the fanfare, give me the welcoming, I want everyone around. But he wanted to be treated like any other soldier. They've all been in there serving their time. So he was very sensitive to that, and he got what he wanted. So he came in very stealthily and was welcomed by his friends and family.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, Jim Carrey dumbs down for the sequel to one of his biggest hits. We'll give our verdict on that and the rest of the week's releases. One of the year's biggest shocks was the death of Robin Williams, who left a legacy of classic films from Mrs. Doubtfire to Good Morning Vietnam. This week, audiences will get to see the comedian in one of his last roles as the 3rd and final night at the museum is released. Joe McAlchuk spoke to the cast.
Hi there. Bet you're not so mean, are you? Huh?
Wanna play fetch? Yeah? Wanna play this phone? Go fetch!
May I suggest a different plan?
What?
When you sort of assemble such a gifted comic cast, sort of yourself, obviously, Owen Wilson, Ricky Gervais, Steve Coogan, Rebel Wilson, is there sort of an element of comedy one-upmanship going on with you guys on set?
I've never felt that people try to out-gag each other on a movie. I mean, I think people try to, you want to just do your best. You want to, sort of be, because it's someone that you are a fan of, you want to just kind of, like with Robin Williams, anytime I was ever working with Robin, I was such a fan that I would want to try to be good.
You mentioned Robin Williams there. I mean, obviously, when you first see him on screen here, it sort of hits you, for the first time that it's obviously incredibly sad. You won't be seeing him again in new film. But is that the beauty of your industry, the fact that he can leave such a legacy and in 10, 15 years' time people can go watch this film and it's a fitting way for him to go out?
Well, he made so many great movies and so many incredible performances and live performances, and what he did on Comic Relief, and just he just left an incredible amount of work behind, and so that's going to live on forever for sure.
I always found it strange and poignant to see actors on screen either years after they've died or weeks after they've died. There is something about an echo that a film actor is able to leave behind that no other craft does leave behind.
And Joe joins me now. Joe, watching Robin Williams on screen, it is really poignant, it is really sad, and especially because his character, he plays President Roosevelt, and it's quite a fatherly figure.
Yeah, I mean, the first time he sort of appears on screen, it really hits you. I said there in that VT, and that pits your stomach, really, and you think, I'm not going to see him again in new work. But thank God the writers gave him a decent send-off in the movie, because it could have been all so different. I mean, he has a final speech, doesn't he? It's a very heartfelt, touching speech. There's obviously packed full of pathos, because it's more poignant now. We know what's happened. I mean, away from Robin Williams, I think this is actually a pretty decent film. I mean, it's wrapping up the trilogy as well of the franchise. It's unashamedly silly, isn't it? And it's fun, and I think the cast look like they're having fun. And I think you could go and you could pick worse films to take the kids to the cinema to over Christmas.
And it's such a good idea as a sort of a franchise, because it does get people interested, really geekily, in going to museums. I mean, it spawned people staying overnight at museums.
It's a great idea, isn't it? I mean, I think we've all walked around, because we're geeks, around the British Museum or other museums, and said, what could these objects talk to us about? And it's a good idea. I think the format is now stretched to sort of breaking point. I think
Rebel Wilson is very funny in it, isn't she?
Yeah,
the one from where's she from?
From Pitch Perfect, Bridesmaid. She's got a Cockney accent going on there, and she hooks up with Ben Stiller's Neanderthal fella here. It's a lot of fun. I think it's basically like a panto, so it's perfect for the Christmas season. It's a silly film, but I think it's a lot of fun.
Okay, talking about silly films, Dumb and Dumber 2. Before you tell me what you think of it and what I think of it, let's have a look.
Let's call her. It's ringing! Whoever this is, we're in the middle of something very important here.
This is your dad.
What?
Hey, guys, I know this is weird timing, but I gotta take this. It's my dad.
She's got me on hold.
I mean, I actually couldn't think of anything worse than sitting in the cinema and watching this. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, you're talking to the wrong person, because the first one, when it was released, I got told to calm down by a cinema attendant because I was laughing so hard. This tapped into my inner 12-year-old, this movie.
4-year-olds?
Well, we develop slower than you women, obviously. But, I think if you hated the first, you're going to despise the second, because it hasn't changed at all. I mean, they're still gurning away, punching each other in the groining and finding it hilarious. But if you enjoyed the first one, there's still a couple of good laughs to have with it.
The sequels aren't generally as good as the first ones,
does it
stand up?
One of the problems is it's not going to stand up, because it's 20 years on, and you've got such big memories of the first if you enjoyed it, that, it hasn't got enough big laughs, I don't think. I think you need 5 big laughs, apparently, to make a really successful comedy on the big screen. You've just seen one of them, not the catheter moment. This scene here is excellent. But I think Jim Carrey's still the most gifted physical comedian there is on the big screen. His partnership with Jeff Daniels Daniels works. I'm not sure how it works. You know, you go from watching The Newsroom with Jeff Daniels to him being just completely stupid.
I can't believe it's the same person, can you?
But it's called Dumb and Dumber, Lucy. You know, if you're not going to get a joke about Marcel Proust, are you?
No.
It is what it is.
And it does what it says on the tin.
Exactly. And I spoke to Jim Carrey because comedy's changed a lot in 20 years. You know, it's got more nuance now, hasn't it? And dramedy and smaller laughs. And he's all for these big, silly laughs.
You know, it doesn't have any pretense at all. You know, it's just gonna work you. You know, in the lowest to the highest vibrations. You know, it's like it's not. There's no arrogance about it. You know, and there's no ego in comedy to me. So you can do all the nuance you want, but if you don't make them laugh, then you don't make them laugh. You know, to me, I'm not crazy about going to see comedies where I go, that's interesting. You know, and I'm not laughing. I want people to pee their pants.
If you're over 30, you'll go and see it out of curiosity. I think if you're under 30, you might think, who the hell are these two old blokes, sort of, you know, on the screen in a silly beard.
So they're
I think
not down
comedy's
with
moved
the kids?
on. No, I think when you look at things like the Jump Street series with Channing Tatum at the moment, I think you look at those films, you look at the Seth Rogen films, obviously, we've been talking about that with the interview. That is the new sort of big screen comedy. This feels dated. I think if you like the first, you'll like this one. Maybe don't go see it at the cinema, watch it on a Friday night when you've had a couple of drinks at home on Sky.
Not for me. Anyway, finally, Exodus with Christian Bale playing Moses. This should be interesting.
How do you know Moses?
You know how I know him?
So you're not his sister, then?
Of course not.
Place your arm on the table.
Ramesses, don't take this any further.
Don't take this any further. What?
Do not take this any further.
Are you quite sure about that? Get your hand off it or use it. Now.
This is Ridley Scott, Christian Bale, Moses.
I think the clips don't do it justice. I mean, you sniggered there. I mean, I think it does look as camp as Christmas, really. And, you know, they've run out of guy liner in the whole of the UK, I think, after making this and fake tan. But I think if you get past that, it is proper old-school biblical epic. I mean, they used to be two a penny, didn't they? And I think they had this solemn and slightly pious tone, and they sort of fell out of fashion. This is full of life and vivaciousness. He plays the Moses story like a political drama. It's Ridley Scott, so he's great at the big epic battle scenes. You know, the 10 plagues of Egypt are brutal. You know, this is the wrath of God on the big screen, and the money shot, the parting of the Red Sea, is tremendous. It's one of the best scenes I've seen all year on screen. It falls slightly short with the slightly hammy personal scenes. Away from Christian Bale's Moses and Joel Edgerton's Ramesses there, they're fantastic as two warring brothers. But you've got Sigourney Weaver in the cast, Ben Kingsley.
They don't Ben Kingsley again?
Yeah, Sir Ben Kingsley.
Sir Ben Kingsley.
They don't really do much. And I think if he had fleshed those characters out, it could have been as good as Gladiator. I really think it potentially is that good. It's not as good as Gladiator. I think, though, when you think back to The Counselor and stuff, you know, and Prometheus, it's probably his best film since Gladiator. And I think try and get past the fake tan and the eyeliner and all that kind of stuff, and perfect Boxing Day fare. Your turkey hangover, 2.5 hours, sit there, let it all wash over you, because it's a spectacle, it's epic. I'd recommend it.
Joe, thank you so much. And that is all for now. But coming up on Entertainment Week in the new year, can Benedict Cumberbatch's triumph at awards season? We'll bring you all the nominations, including the BAFTAs. And Golden Globe nominee Ethan Hawke will be here to talk about his critically acclaimed role in Boyhood.